Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Chad Franzen here, co-host for this show where we feature top restaurateurs, investors, and business leaders. This is part of our Spot On series. Spot On has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship solution called Spot On Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all in one. They've served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom-and-pop restaurants. To learn more, go to spoton.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses to get ROI, clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships through Done For You podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, there's no better way to do it than through podcasts and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25media.com or email us at support@rise25media.com. Before he retired in 2017, Aylwin Lewis served as Chief Executive Officer of Potbelly Sandwich Works for more than 9 years. During that time, he led the drive to take Potbelly public, which happened in 2013. Prior to Potbelly, he had been CEO of Kmart for a year until it merged with Sears, and then was CEO of Sears Holdings for 3 years. For 4 years before that, he was Chief Operating Officer for Yum Brands, which includes KFC, Long John Silver's, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and A&W, and that's after serving as COO of Pizza Hut. He's also served on the board of directors for the Walt Disney Company, Red Robin Burgers, Starwood Hotels and Resorts, Marriott International, Kmart, Sears Holdings, and Potbelly Sandwich Works. He started his career with Jack in the Box in 1977. Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Chad, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you. It's my pleasure. So you obviously have a very distinguished career, an incredible story. If you could, tell me a little bit about what your life was like growing up. Who and what helped prepare you for such an amazing professional journey?
So born and raised in Houston, Texas, the son of Albert and Eddie Lewis, working class folks, raised in church, so got good values there. My father was superintendent of Sunday school, was a deacon. So we're very active in the church. Mom really stressed the importance of education and was very value-based, being independent, being self-reliant, a ton of emphasis on education, doing things the right way. And so a big part of my motivation was not disappointing my parents, ever. Never wanted to do anything to make them ashamed of me. The other big motivation was just trying to do the right things. And my mom was always, she said, I don't care what you are or what you decide to be, just do your best. Don't back up to the pay window. And so that was very important. First 10 years, we were in the projects across the street from CUNY Homes, across the street from TSU. Then we moved into our home in Southeast Houston. And public schools, University of Houston, BA and a BS. Went to grad school at University of Washington for a period. Got an MBA from University of Houston later in my career, and then a master's of human resource management. So, my motto was show up and be prepared. And the persona that I've always thought of myself as a student going through life. And so, always in the business of acquiring knowledge so that could help drive your activities.
What was it about the restaurant industry that was particularly appealing to you?
So I spent a year at the University of Washington. I was in the literature department working on a degree, and went home for the summer. I had a business degree, never thought I'd use it. Fortunately, I got hired by Jack in the Box. I was just going to work for the summer, fill my bank account up, then go back and finish the degree. And within a week of getting to the management training program, I was just enthralled. One with the notion of had an opportunity to run $1 million business. Serving customers was really amazing to me. I had never worked in customer service. And then the real thing was the ability to help people that wanted to help themselves. And so, restaurant industry, retail, you kind of deal with underrepresented folks that are kind of left behind. And if they're willing to learn, if they're willing to work hard, the restaurant business was really where you could climb the rung of success in this economic environment and in this society. And so that was very appealing to me. Then the other thing was appealing. I always had a gene for teaching. And so a big part of being in restaurant business was knowing teaching was a way to engage people, to help people learn. And so it satisfied a lot of needs. And so the restaurant industry for me was a combination of, economically helping myself, but also giving back in a real way and helping people that wanted to help themselves. And barriers of entry was very low. And again, the premium was on hard work, serving people well, having values. And so I kind of stumbled into it, didn't go back for the degree. I was put on a leave of absence for a year and just fell in love with the business. And so kind of started there.
So you were at the University of Washington, and you said you had a business degree that you'd never really planned on using. Well, did you have a plan that you would change?
Yeah. See, I got a double major. So BA in literature and a BS in business. And so I was going to be a college professor, write great American novels and teach literature. And so that's the path I was on. And so that, it's a very stuffy, staid environment. And sort of restaurant business, the high it and fast food, it was the middle 70s, 76, 77. And it was just high energy. It was fast paced. It was exciting, the adrenaline rush. I was an athlete, fairly decent athlete in high school. And so it brought that back. So having stamina, having the energy, pumping people up, working around people, it was just fascinating. I just absolutely just fell in love with it. And I tell people this business has to be a passion because we extend ourselves and we work when other folks are off. And so if you are looking for kind of a 9-to-5 steady type of deal, the restaurant business is not it. But if you love helping people, you love serving high quality food, if you love serving customers, and the thing of beauty is when restaurants really work. It really is.
So what did you do? What did you do specifically at Jack in the Box when you first got there in your first job?
So I was assistant manager trainee. So I was at a training restaurant, had to learn the business, the manual part of it, making all the products, working on stations, and then, the accounting part, the inventory, scheduling. And, I had what I learned was I pulled out some of the things I learned from a business school of planning, organizing the work, having meetings with the management team, engaging the management team. And so that stuff early on just really served me well. And then once I got, out of the single unit and was multi-unit, I went back and got a degree in human management resources. So a master. So I was predisposed toward doing things well around people and understanding people, but that degree gave me real tools to accelerate on how to develop individuals, how to develop an organization, the importance of organized training, the importance of a leadership model, of a coaching model. And so, it was just, I was in the business for 40 years. I loved every minute of it. And my mission was to see how far I could go. Wasn't a lot of people that looked like me in the business. Could I push the envelope? At every door I entered, I wanted to make sure I made it easier for people following me. So whatever I remember, so here's an example. The first day of training, the training manager sat us down, training supervisor sat us down, and he's Mr. Glenn, and he says, listen, I'm going to train y'all on everything, and you're not going to be put in a situation that you haven't been well trained for. So he's like, wow, that's pretty good. So the second day, lunch comes, he said, y'all got to go on the floor because the restaurant's short staffed. And I get put on the taco station. I had never seen a taco. I never made a taco. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there, I get orders for 12 tacos. And I had no clue. And so then the manager, Vicky, started yelling at me. And it was a mess. I dropped the tacos. And then she just came over, just get out of the way. I felt an inch small. Now I was college educated. I'd been a captain of a football team. I'd accomplished some things. And I felt an inch small because I had customers looking at me, had employees looking at me. And from that day forward, it's like, okay, one, I'm never going to be in this situation again. but I'm never going to put anybody in a situation where they're feeling that small. And so that was kind of the orientation. So it's like you don't want to put people in a situation where it's going to hurt their self-esteem. You do want to make sure people are prepared, even if at the expense of you and the team. You never want to put a new person in a situation they don't know how to handle. And so day one, it was make sure people are trained, make sure the orientation goes through, make sure they have a time to read the manual and learn before you put them into action.
What was it, given that experience, that you had? A lot of young people might be like, I'm out of here. I don't need to deal with all this. What made you decide to, stick through it and, build from that experience and build on what you had learned and even do the opposite of how that person treated you?
I was never a quitter. And so even if, and listen, at that time, it was a short-term deal. So it's like, I'm going to only be here for the summer, so I can get through this. That was my goal, but I wasn't a quitter. And it's like, in every situation, no matter how bad it is, you get a chance to come back tomorrow and start anew. That's the beauty of the restaurant business, is that, that I used to say my strikeout gets me closer to my next home run, that the interception gets me closer to the next touchdown. And so just part of the training, part of being an athlete, part of being a student, it's like nothing's going to deter me from my dream. Nothing's going to make me run away from this. Let's conquer it. And so that's kind of orientation I had.
You talked about your growing up, how kind of you had some values instilled in you. What are some of those, specific values that you kind of cling to and that were particularly valuable during your career?
Integrity, number one. Your word is your bond. If you promise something, you don't steal, you don't lie. Integrity is the most important thing. It helps build trust. Hard work. No matter what, no one was going to outwork me. I was blessed with good stamina. So, you bring your lunch pail, you don't back up to the pay window. Teamwork. Once I got into the restaurant environment, it's just obvious. Individualized performance does not lead to success. So how do you work with a team? How do you lead a team? So teamwork. Accountability. Being able to say, if something is wrong, it's my fault. And when you're a team leader, you give them all the credit for success. And if you have failure, you take the failure. Communication is very key. And so that was early on. It's like, how do you communicate? But I was in grad school. I was in literature major. I was getting ready to start on a dissertation. I had $1 million vocabulary. I came out with all these flowery words, but then you're like, if they don't understand what you're saying, if they can't read what you're saying, then what's the purpose? So then the whole communication. Then the other thing is just being a learner, being curious, understanding the environment, understanding how to excel in the environment. So those are just key. And perseverance. There's, the first sign of trouble, you don't let that deter you. And in that environment, in the restaurant environment, if you have a victim mentality, it will slap you. It will victimize you. So you cannot have a victim mentality. You have to have a mentality of be prepared. One of the things I used to always do is I drive to work in the morning. And I'd say, okay, I'd play the what if game. And I thought about, and the worst thing if you're general managers, no one shows up, what do I do? Once you have a contingency plan for the worst thing that could happen to you that day, everything else is gravy. Everything else is gravy. So those core values, but it starts with integrity, and that serves you well. And I think when you are value-centered, it allows you to be situational because you have a touchstone. It helps guide you through what's right, what's wrong, and what your principles are. Then you can apply your ability and your experience to the situation. And I always prided myself being very, very situational.
Was it just as important? Those are some key fundamental values. Was it just as important to cling to those values when you are you're not just the general manager of one restaurant, you're the CEO of a major restaurant brand. Was it just as important to cling to those values then as it was when you were working your way up?
Oh, absolutely. And more importantly, and I learned this from working with David Novak at Yum Brands, the importance of culture and the importance of having values and being able to define those values in a real way, use those values in the business, and teach those values. And so, I worked with David from 95 to I left in 2004. And, culture is just so important. And then teaching culture and cascading it down to the front line was just so important. So absolutely, I think it's more important when you're at the top. And to me, it was an open invitation. And we had 6 core values at Potbelly. And it's like, if I do these things, I'm inviting the rest of the company to do these things. And everybody has permission to call you out if they see you not using one of the values, not living one of the values. And I think by going public, by walking and talking in a public way, it forces you to behave a certain way.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how does your behavior maybe in the main office trickle down to the front lines?
Well, I think it's everything. So every culture class that we taught, I taught the first class, because and although we had training development folks that developed curriculum, we always operationalized by the leaders teaching it 2 levels down. And that cascade cements this notion of you can't get up in front of people and talk about integrity if you yourself don't act with integrity. You lose your credibility at that instance. So it forces you to walk the talk. And then I was always very, field oriented. Even as a CEO, I was 60% of the time in the field. So the first part of the week, I would be in the office doing meetings, following up on things, following up on strategy. And then the balance of the week was out in the field, seeing how close what we were espousing, how close was that happening at the counter with the food, with the customers, and then coaching in a real time and encouraging people to give their best.
So you're obviously somebody who places a great deal of value on values. Was there kind of like a passion of yours that you were always following or chasing, even at multiple stops on a high level?
Oh yeah. No, I listen, before I learned how to do it working with David, every job I took, the first meeting I would have is say, okay, here are my personal values, and I would list them. And then that's the speech was, if I do these things, I'm inviting you to do these things. And so being value, and it allows you to bring your whole self to work. It allows you to, and then it allows people to self-select, do they want to be here? Do they want to participate? And the language of the values, when we did the Potbelly values, the management team and I went off for a week, and we argued over every word, because language is important. Because what you're asking, there's a lot of ways to say integrity. There's a lot of ways to say enthusiasm. We use positive energy. So there's a moment of truth where you have to say, I'm going to use integrity versus honesty. I'm going to use positive energy versus enthusiasm. And so you have to make that choice, that I'm going to use this language, I'm going to live these values. And that's a moment of truth. And you just want to make sure that people understand that, and you present it that way. That's why it's an invitation. Don't want to force you. But if you don't want to live this way and behave with these values, then that's okay. We'll help you to your next assignment.
As a sandwich connoisseur, if I go into Potbelly, do you think I could see that reflected in the culture within one particular restaurant?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I would say when I went there in 2008, the restaurants had a great culture. They had not codified it. They had not defined it. And my job was to help put it on paper. And so we used a lot of the language that the restaurants use. Restaurants use positive energy. And so, it's everyone has these things they put on a wall, they talk about, but you actually use it. We would start meetings with the values. We had three training classes a year where we would take 3 values a year and have a 2-hour class and cascade it throughout the organization. The goal was, here's what this value means to us. Here's what we hope it could mean to you. And this is how you use it in this environment. And so absolutely, to me, culture does not exist unless it's real in the restaurants. Your customers need to feel it. Your suppliers need to feel it. And actually, when we would bring on new suppliers, we'd have a supplier conference every summer. and we would go through our values and we would share these values. And it's like, we only want to do business with people who can share these values. You don't have to use our language, but we want you to understand integrity is most important to us. Positive energy is most important to us. Accountability is very important to us.
You've already shared some good stories, your manager at Jack in the Box and some other ones. Are there any other stories, or maybe one or two stories or lessons that you learned along the way that we'd love to hear?
Well, I think what's important as you grow in this business is understanding at some point, it's not about you as a leader. Leadership is a privilege, and you want to always treat people the way you want to be treated. And the best way to engage people is to engage them their whole selves. If I have a problem with food costs in the restaurant, I'm going to talk to the cooks. I'm going to talk to the cashiers. As a leader, we always always kind of start with us. And I don't have to know everything. I have these people around me. Let me use their minds as well as their energy, their bodies, their hands, and their feet. Engaging the mind is just so important. That's a lesson I learned over and over. I would do roundtables. I'd sit down with a group of 15 people. I'd ask 3 questions. Why do you work here? What don't you like about what we're doing? And if you had my job for a week, what 2 things would you change? And it was just incredible. And I did 90% of those sessions was just listening. And at the end, I would end up answering questions if they had misconceptions. And then always, if they had issues, if I wrote it down, it's like getting back was just so important. So I would just say, treating people well. One of the big things for us was just turnover, and we had half the turnover of the industry because we spent a lot of time. Retention starts with selection, and so I like to say, be very hard on who you hire, and it makes the management easy. That's why the values are so important. And then here's what I used to always tell in classes. So I got my second restaurant. So at Jack in the Box, if you were successful, you had to run one restaurant. They transferred you to another restaurant, and you'd have to demonstrate you could do it again. Mm-hmm. So I'd been running this one restaurant in North Houston. And they gave me a restaurant in South Houston. And I was off that weekend. It was a transition weekend. So I go by the restaurant on the Saturday night, and I talked to a young woman at the window, give me a free lemon pie. So I go back the next night, and I talk her into giving me the whole order free. So I figured out I got a thief, and I'm gonna use this. So I show up that Monday, work the first shift. I got 23 employees. At 5 o'clock, she walks in the door. I think she recognized me. So she's thinking either this can be really good, it can be really bad. And so I immediately just terminated her on the spot. I said, you're a thief. You gave me a free lemon pie on Saturday night. Yeah, I see what and you gave me a free meal. I felt so self-righteous. It's like, okay, new chef in town. I'm letting people know I stand for integrity, and I'm not gonna allow people to give away free food. Little did I know, out of 23 people, 16 were related to her.
Oh.
So I was running a 24-hour restaurant, brand new. And by Tuesday, I had 7 people left.
Oh, man.
In a very difficult staffing situation. That's why I had so many of them with relatives. So lesson learned there is that new sheriff in town, you take the time to understand the situation. You meet with all employees. Then you lay out, here's the plan. Here's my values. And you give people an opportunity. You don't go in just blazing the first day.
Don't need to flex your muscles right away, huh?
No.
So you had been in leadership positions with Yum Brands for more than a decade, and then you left the restaurant industry for a while. I'm guessing you applied the same values and things that were important to you no matter where you worked. But what did you learn from outside of the restaurant industry that may have helped you as you came back into Potbelly?
Well, listen, values, the stuff that worked at Yum really worked. It was difficult in the Sears situation, mainly because the chairman had a different idea of things. And eventually, after 3.5 years, just hit me. It's like, you may not can win here because our values were not aligned. And so, but what I will tell you is that we did culture classes there. I focused on the top 500, taught a day-long class of the culture, and had a moment of truth. That so it was 13 of those that the fall of 05 after the merger. things work. The value stuff work, but you have to be aligned with the total leadership if you're going to have the dramatic impact that we need. Because even in 05, 06, 07, it was obvious that the onslaught of the internet was going to have a disassociated impact on brick and mortar. Even back then, that was clear it's going to happen. Wasn't sure the timing. And so when I went back to Potbelly, and I picked Potbelly because it was small, it was a way to get my hands dirty so I could reaffirm the things I had learned at Yum Brands. And so the values, the product, an aligned management team, a structure that supports the strategy, and then energetic leadership and focus on the front line, focus on the customers, focus on the product, all that stuff. Potbelly gave me a chance to reaffirm.
Do you have advice based on your experience of not having your values aligned with the company that you would give to maybe people who are looking for a new job or out job searching for the first time?
I think the first thing you have to do is what are your personal values? And you need to align your values with the company you're working with. If you don't have that alignment, then it's like having two sets of books. You got to be something when you're at work, when you're not at work. And that's just not, life is too short to go through that. So the first thing is understanding the values. Then it is important to understand the nature of the work and who you're working with. Because in our business, people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. And there's a lot of ways to get results in a short term in a restaurant environment. You want to make sure you work for someone that's going to do it the right way, going to do it through people, going to do it through coaching, and be very transparent. And, in this business, the heat of the moment, you want leaders that are calm. I don't believe in screaming and yelling. I don't believe in demeaning people. I believe in quiet leadership that's steady. And that steadiness comes at the height of a rush. That steadiness comes even when you're two people short. The anchor of that restaurant needs to be the leader. And if the leader's unstable, then you don't have a shot. And so those are all things important, but it starts with values, understanding the company, understanding the situation, and working for a leader that's going to respect you as a person.
COVID has been a huge challenge for everyone in the restaurant industry. You've been retired, at least as a CEO, during the pandemic, but you have been a leader in other, in the 2008 economic crisis. You were a leader during 9/11. What kind of advice do you have for the restaurant industry now, given what they're going through?
Well, listen, I still involved on boards. We used to do scenario planning, and that would be if you had a natural disaster that would take away 5% of your business, hurt a region for a period of time. How do you survive that? And you had resources where you could transfer. That nothing in your wildest dreams say, if I lose 90% of my business, I lose 7% of my business, what do I do? Just never thought that way, right? That even in years at Disney, very sophisticated company, we had a lot of plans on a lot of stuff, but never about a pandemic. And so I think the smart management teams were one that first said, okay, this is about survival. How do you get liquidity so you can survive, so you can fight another day? And if I have to decimate my team, how do I do it in such a way that leaves them as whole as possible? And be very transparent on what's going to happen so they're not surprised. Again, treating people where you need to be treated. And then how do you turn on a dime? Ghost kitchens, I saw people do the whole carry out. I think this pandemic for the successful companies accelerated the role of technology, accelerated the role of, food, people taking your food to their homes, delivery, apps. All that stuff got accelerated by 5 to 10 years. And pay systems, even closing the books. 5 years ago, the notion that you could have monthly close and do it remotely, and then have the public accounting firms do their work remotely was unheard of. So it did accelerate that stuff. So now on the other end of this, it's like, how do I bring people back and then have them understand what happened and try to provide safeguards to say, if you come back, you give me another chance, we're going to try very hard that this doesn't happen to you again. I do think that's very important because right now you have people that thought they had great careers. Food's always going to be there. Restaurants, hotels, always going to be there. That disappeared. So how do you come back and convince people, okay, give us another try, please? And here's what we're going to do on the other end. If it ever happens again, here's some things we learned. So it won't be as severe as this one may have been. I think that's all important. But innovation, technology, reducing menus. For the longest, I'm an operator, had some marketing jobs, but I always thought our menus were too excessive. So now it's like, let's get down to menu items that really make money, that customers really want. The whole 80-20 thing. The notion of running your business without the dining room. I mean, you'd have terminated a manager if they closed the dining room for 1 minute. So all that stuff in terms of survival, driving a business, and staying alive and growing, all that stuff became important. So I think that's the lessons you kind of learn, is that strong management teams look at disaster and still say, what's the opportunity? And how do we exploit the opportunity?
Yeah,
this business is resilient. This business is populated by very smart people. It will take a while, but it will come back because it is essential. It is very essential to the economy. It's very essential to the lives of people. And so it will come back. It will be different. And that's why it's so important to codify the lessons that you kind of learn.
Your career has seen so many milestones. You mentioned that when you were starting, there weren't a lot of people that looked like you. I mentioned that you were a huge part in taking Potbelly public. What are a few milestones that you're particularly proud of?
Well, listen, being COO of Pizza Hut in the late 90s was a really big deal. I was chief marketing officer for a year at KFC in the middle 90s. Big deal. Being the COO of the entire company after the spinoff for Yum Brands, and being the number 2 guy at the company was important. And then, listen, it was a suicide mission to leave the confines of my home at Yum. I loved the company. David was great. Dave Dino was great as the CFO. But I wanted to be a CEO. And I was never going to compete against the family. So there's no way I could stay in the restaurant business at that time, because then I would have been competing against the family. And I never was going to do that. Got calls all the time. And it's like, no, I can't compete against the family. There's no place on the globe I can go and not compete against the family. And so retail was a way to do that. And so first with a $20 billion company, and then the combined company was $53 billion. And what I will say is the 3 years I was there, it's the most money the company has made 20 years prior, and definitely after that. So those 3 years are a high mark if you look at the profitability of the company and you look at the things we accomplished. So I was very proud of that. 2014 got the Golden Chain Award, industry recognition of a career, distinguished alumni from University of Houston in 2015. So listen, I have had a tremendously blessed life. I was born in the projects. We were poor, but we were proud. And so, only in America could a kid born in the projects in Houston, Texas, had a career that I've had. And so I wake up every morning with a tremendous sense of gratitude. I feel very blessed. And then it's a sense of how you give back. And so, I'm chairman of the board of visitors at University of Houston. I've set up a scholarship fund for disadvantaged kids in 3 of the colleges there. And it's just a way to give back. That college education was just so important. It was such a foundation, the learning, the enlightenment, the foundation that once you finish that degree, now you're on a pathway of learning for the rest of your life. And that's what that instilled in me.
How did you keep from, just getting from the projects to any of the places, many of the places that you were professionally, how did you keep from letting that go to your head?
Humility is very important. And Mom drove that to us. My wife keeps me very humble. She's like, you're not the CEO of nothing around here. So I've been married for 38 years, the same woman. Listen, I've seen how ego gets in the way, and that's just not who I am. For me, it's all about, I really believe in the inverted pyramid. It's like you get to a place of leadership so you can do maximum good for the most people. and you recognize, every day when I left work, I would look myself in the mirror and say, okay, did I earn the right to come back tomorrow? Because you have a lot of people counting on you when you're at the top of the organization, and it's a price to pay. And it is a privilege to be a leader. So I was very humble. When I traveled, I never traveled with an entourage. I visited restaurants. 80% of the visitors were blind. Get on a plane, leave the first flight in the morning. You get in the car. I drove myself. I ironed my shirts. I shined my shoes. All that stuff just keeps you humble. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. And it's a people business. Can I look a person in the eye, be interested in what's happening to them, and can I have impact? And so humility is very important. It's one of the things we talked leadership in the companies was like, you want to be humble, you want to be approachable, you don't want to be self-indulgent. And I did have one technique I used. So the first Wednesday of every month from 8 to 9 was always pity party. And so I would give myself an opportunity to say, oh, woe is me for all the things that have been done to me that month. It was 1 hour a month. And it was a way just to unload the stuff the negative stuff that was attaching itself to you. And so I built myself that every month for that 1 hour. It's like, okay, let's just have the all-in pity party. Then you get on your way.
Did you have
life's too short. Life's too short to be negative. Life's too short to focus on the negative. Positive energy means a lot.
That was a once a month thing. You said you also played the what if game on your way to work. Did you have any other daily rituals that helped keep you happy or grounded each day?
Planning was very important. I was a district manager, had some success, and I was on my way from 606 to 620. The numbers of the restaurants, I remember this, and I was thinking, boy, you're really stupid. On the weeks that I got a lot done, I had my week planned. I would start that Sunday and I'd map out every day, and I got a ton of stuff done. So my reward for that week was then, okay, I don't have to do a plan this week. And at the end of that week, I felt so unaccomplished. It's like, you idiot, you need to do this all the time. And so planning was a big part. A tactical plan for every job I had, started with a job map, tactical plan, put the plan on the calendar, and you live by the calendar. And then, once a quarter, you follow up on, did you do the things you said you was going to do? But absolutely planning the work to have impact, attach that to results was just very important. So that I will say that was the secret to my success. Every job I had, it was that job map. How do I want to spend my time? And then what are the tactics against the success criteria that we have? What am I personally going to do to drive that success? And then putting those tactics on a calendar.
Final question for you. We are big fans of publicly acknowledging people who have been influential for us. You've already mentioned, obviously, your parents had a huge impact on you and some of their colleagues that you've had. Who was a mentor, maybe somebody in the industry that was particularly influential for you?
So I had 4 mentors. The first one was Bob Nugent at Jack in the Box. Bob just had a different leadership style and opened up a way. When I was still formative, it's like, man, I want to be like this guy because of his knowledge, his ability to relate to people. Kyle Craig at KFC USA really demonstrated that good people could finish first. He was a very good guy. David Novak, obviously. And then lastly was Mr. Pearson, who was the first chairman of Young Brands, Andy Pearson, smartest man I ever met. But even at, when he became chairman, I think he was in his mid-70s. And we did we did 360s. His first 360 came back horrible because he was bombastic. He was another time period. He used profanity. He scream and yell. And that came back on his 360. And he sent out a note to the whole company saying, I hear you loud and clear. And here are the things from this day forth I'm going to do. And it became totally different. But no one smarter, strategic. He taught general manager class, I think 8 years at Harvard Business School. He had been president of PepsiCo before that. Just a brilliant guy. And he really helped me when I was in that COO role, look at the broad picture. It's like, don't do things unless they are scalable, unless they are enduring, because then you're just wasting resources. And so those 4 people had dramatic impact on my career. And then my personal life just my career wouldn't have been possible without the partnership with my wife.
Sure. That's great. Great to hear. Did you ever wish you had become an English professor?
No, haven't looked back. Yeah, this is a great industry. It's magical serving food to customers when you can do it and listen, I have a European sense of what it means to be a restaurateur. I'm proud of the fact of the mass feeders that we do, the high quality that it takes, it's just supreme high quality supply chains, the attention to detail it takes to serve the same product across multiple units and do it in a consistent way. It is an amazing thing, and I'm very proud to be part of that.
Well, hey, Mr. Lewis, it's been a privilege and an honor to have the chance to talk to you, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity, and you much success in what you're doing, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.